Hey folks, how we doing? Mr. Roulette here today, and we are going to be talking some music theory today. The concept of music theory is a very broad category. So what it's talking about is the reason that music is constructed the way it is. So unlike, you know, where you just throw some stuff together, music has rules. We always have different rules that we need to follow. There are different things to watch out for, different concepts that need to work together to create the music that we listen to. Accidentals is one of those concepts. So we are going to dig into accidentals today. We are going to figure out what this is all about and kind of get a look at what accidentals do and what they really are. First things first, accidentals is a kind of misleading term. The word accident obviously means that something was done not on purpose. Accidentals in music, though, are very much on purpose. They are not accidents. It's not just something that magically appears and happens. It's very much a specific thing that is purpose. So just so we get that out of the way to begin with, that accidentals do happen on purpose. So let's dig in here and let's see what's going on with accidentals. So the first big question is, what is an accidental? So according to the textbook that I use when I was in college, Tonal Harmony, which is the fifth edition of it, an accidental is a symbol that raises or lowers a pitch by a half or whole step. So we'll talk about those terms in a little bit. As we know, there are three main types of music or movement in music: steps and repeats. We're going to take that step category and we're going to break it down a little further. So, as it said in the definition, there are two subcategories of steps: there's the half step and the whole step. So, we'll discover what those mean in just a moment. So, in music, there are technically five different types of accidentals. We are going to focus on the main basic three, and those three are the sharp, the flat, and the natural. Now, for those of you wondering, what are the other two types? There's something called a double sharp and a double flat. We're not going to get into those today. Those get a little bit weird and they are less common in music, so we're not going to really concern ourselves with them at this point. If you want to know more, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm very happy to talk to you about music theory. It's one of the things I really enjoy. I'm kind of a nerd about it, as you're going to probably find out in this video. So we've got the main three types: sharps, flats, and naturals. Each type of accidental is going to alter a pitch in one way or another. So when using the accidentals, the letter name of the pitch does not change. It's going to just simply add the word sharp, flat, or natural to the letter name. So these are in addition to the letter name that you use. So we're talking about, A, B, C, D, E, G, the musical alphabet. So when you're using accidentals, please try to remember, and you're going to get more of this, but this is important to remember at the beginning. Accidentals, the symbol goes before the note and after the letter name. So when you write the notation on the staff, the accidental comes before the note. When you are writing the letter name out, it comes after letter. And again, we'll see that in just a moment. So now we got to discuss the concept of whole versus half steps. So before we get into the actual accidentals, we are going to take a look at these. A whole step is going to refer to the progression between two consecutive pitches in the musical alphabet. For example, we're going from the letter C to D or G to A. Now, there's a couple of them that are going from one letter to the next that are not whole steps, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes here. So, for right now, the basic definition of whole step is just the progression between two consecutive pitches in the music. Half step is going to refer progression between a letter name and its corresponding sharp or flat pitch. For example, C is to C sharp. That's your half step. It moves up by just a little as opposed to a full step. B, for example, down to B flat. A flat can turn into A natural. Now, yes, you can have the corresponding sharp or flat, but naturals, as we'll learn here, are part of that as well. Okay, so we will get into that in just a moment here about what's going on with that. But for the time being, just remember those two definitions. Whole step, two consecutive notes, they're different letters. half steps, same letter name, adding a sharp now. So we're going to visualize this using the keyboard. Hopefully, by now we're getting at least a little bit more familiar with the piano keyboard and the layout of those pages. So to review real quick here, the keyboard is made up of groups of white and black keys. Each key gets its own letter, and the keys are labeled as follows: C, D. So when you're moving by a whole step, you're going to move from one letter to the next in the musical alphabet, as long as you skip the key immediately next to the one you start on. So for example, you're going to be doing something like this. Move there. So taking a look here, you start on C. This is the next key in order because it's touching, right? So we got that right there. Now we're going to skip that key and we're going to go right up to D. So it changes the letter and it moves it by a whole step because it skips the one key, so D to E. Now you'll notice here that there's no arrow between E and F or between B and C. Now this is because there is no black key, there is no half step between E and F or B and C. We're going to touch more on that in just a moment here. So you have those black keys in between, like I said, and that's what creates that whole step between those letters. Now, if you don't have the black key there, you don't have or a whole step, so you will need something a little different. So it changes. There is not a black key. Skip in a couple different places. So yeah, each whole note skips it. There are two places where it's not. You see that right there. Talked about. All right, folks. All right. So since there is no key between E and F and C, we cannot call it a whole step. There is no key to skip. So that is what becomes a half step. Now, a half step is going to be when you immediately next to the one that you're on. So like C going to the black key right there, or the black key to there, E to F, that. So those are our half steps. So we're going to get into the accidentals, and then that will help you kind of see what those keyboard notes are, because I know I didn't label those keyboard notes. That's okay. We can go back and we can talk about that in just a moment, but we need. So the first accidental we are going to cover is something called sharp. So the sharp is going to refer to an accidental that's going to raise a pitch by half a step. That's the important part to remember. So a sharp raises the pitch by half a step. The sharp symbol looks this right here. That is your sharp symbol. Now, number one, it's a sharp. If you're in music, it is a sharp. Do not call it a hashtag sign or else, please, because it is a sharp. We want to use the right musical terminology. If we don't, we cannot have those intelligent conversations like we are all capable of. So please make sure that you don't say that it's C hashtag or something like that. It is a C sharp. Because when naming the pitch, we refer to it as the letter name followed by the word sharp. So if you see this symbol right here, C with the sharp symbol, you say it exactly how you would. C sharp turns into that. The symbol is always going to come after the letter when writing out the pitch in words. Okay? So you always want to put the accidental after the letter. Now, if we look at this on the staff, we are going to notice that it's going to come before the note. So you see right there, you've got your G, that second line of the treble clef, G. And as we add the sharp symbol, we have a G sharp. It becomes G sharp. Now the sound of that, you can hear. It's a half step. It's a small movement. Listen. Up. Sharp right there. Listen one more time. So it starts on G, pitch. No, by half a step. Goes. Not a big movement, but enough to raise that pitch and to change it. So let's talk about the flat next. The flat is an accidental that's going to lower the pitch by half a step. Okay? So please remember that it is lowering by one step. So the flat symbol, I should say flat, not sharp. Whoops, sorry guys. The flat symbol looks like this right here. It's a little lowercase b. Okay. So when naming the pitch, we're going to refer to it as the letter by the word flat. So if you have a B with the flat symbol, it becomes flat. And once again, it always comes after the letter when you write pitch out. So looking at this on the staff, for example, we've got an E right here, top space, F-A-C. All right. So it's going to come before the note just like the sharp did. So you've got an E moving down that half step to the flat. That's when you add the flat symbol. You can hear that sound. You're going to hear it lower this time just a little bit. So you hear that come down. Listen one last time. Get that half step motion. That sounds like. Actually. So let's go back to the sharp for just a moment. Make sure that this is going. So listen to the sharp one more time. Sorry, folks. I think we have technical difficulty. So here's what the sharp sounds like. So we can hear that it raises that. Now I see over. Let's have audio this time. So listen one more time to that, please. Sorry about that sharp. Listen to it up one more. So natural G. And it's just that small little bit. So we discussed the flat already. This is the same page you saw. We're going to listen to the flat one more time because now you can actually hear it as opposed to sitting here listening to. So here's what that sounds like. We've got E moving down to the flat. And there's that small little change. This time down to E flat. So that's our sharp and flat. Now we have the natural. So the last accidental we're going to cover is something called a natural. And a natural is going to cancel a sharp or flat and return the pitch to its original tone. So what that means is the natural sometimes raises a pitch and other times lowers a pitch. Now don't let this confuse you. Think about it for a second. If you have a sharp and you are going to make that tone be natural again, you're going to have to lower that tone because sharp already raised that note. Okay? So hear that. We'll listen to the example in just a moment. But if you have a flat and you make it natural, you have to bring it back up to its normal tone. So if this right here, if this kind of weird C shape I'm making with my hand is the tone, and we make it sharp, it goes high. When you make it natural, it's got to bring it back down to that tone. If we make it flat, it's low. To make it natural, we bring it back up again to that base tone, that original tone. So the natural symbol looks like this. It's kind of a strange little L7 sort of combination right there. And that denotes the term natural, which means it's going to, again, cancel out that sharper. So when naming the pitch, we're going to refer to it as the letter natural. So for example, G sharp turns into G natural, E flat turns into E natural. So looking at this on the staff, we see how the natural is either going to raise or lower a pitch. Now, like I said, if you have a flat and you make it natural, you have to bring that note back up to create the natural tone. So listen to this tune, this sound right here. Now it's staying the same pitch. It's a half step, which means that it's going to take it that half step below and bring it back onto that tone. The same thing happens if you look over here and you have your sharp. You're going to start above the tone because it's a G sharp, and you're going to bring it back down to a G natural. All right. So you see how it can be either or. It really depends on the accidental that comes before it. So if you have a flat and you make it natural, you're going to raise it. If you have a sharp and you make it natural, you're going to lower it. But don't confuse that with what the flats and sharps do on their own. That's only for the natural. Natural changes it back to that base tone. Okay? you have questions about that, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to try to explain it again for you. But we are going to recap right here. So going back through this, and we're going to take a look at what we've already done. An accidental, like I said, is a symbol that's going to raise or lower a pitch by a half or a whole step. The most majority of the accidentals we've focused on today raise it by a half step. Like I mentioned earlier, the double sharp and the double flat are that those are the ones that to raise it by a step. So the basic types, the sharp and the flat, only lower it or raise it by half of a step. Okay. So, like I said, three basic types of accidentals are going to be sharps, flats, and naturals. Discussed just a moment. A whole step is going to refer to the progression between two consecutive pitches in the musical alphabet, C to D, G to A. Now remember, there are two places just going from letter that do not create a whole step. Between E and F is a half step, it's not a whole step. And between C, that's not a whole step either, that's a half step. So just remember, looking at the piano keyboard, you have to make sure that you have the black key in between it that allows you to create that whole step as opposed to the half step. So a half step, like I said, is the progression between a letter name and its corresponding sharp or flat pitch, with the exception, of course, of E to F and B to C. Don't worry too much about that. Just remember that E to F and B to C are half steps. So, for example, you can also have the C to C sharp, B to B flat, or A flat to A natural, or whichever way you natural symbols. Okay. So looking on here, continuing this recap, a sharp is going to refer to an accidental. This is a pitch by a half step. And it looks that right there. Not a hashtag, it's called a sharp. Make sure you call it sharp. A flat refers to an accidental that lowers a pitch by half a step. It's like the little P right there. So a fun way to remember this is sharp looks like if you were to like step on it or sit on it or something like that, it's going to poke you. So you can remember that it raises it. Step on it. It's kind of like you step on it, you're like, ow. You have to raise your foot back up because you're going to really sit there with their foot staying on something sharp. Not me, I'll tell you that much. And the flat, you can remember it like when if your parents have, unfortunately, I have ever gotten a flat tire, or you've ever gotten a flat tire on like your bike if you ride a bike. It does, but if you're a bike rider and you have gotten a flat tire, you know that tire goes lower. Okay, so that's how you can remember the sharps versus the flats. The natural is going to cancel the sharp or the flat and return the pitch to its original tone. Again, like we discussed before, sometimes it makes it go higher in the case of a flat to a natural. Sometimes it makes it go lower in the case of a sharp. The natural symbol looks like that kind of L7 mashup right there. So the one thing that we need to look at still is we're going to go back in the slides, back in time a little bit. So we get to the piano keyboard. All right. So don't worry about the writing. Don't worry about the words, nothing like that. Just look at the piano keyboard. Okay. So if you're starting on C right there and you move up by half a step, every time that you are moving from left to right on the piano keyboard, we're going to call those notes sharps. So left to right equals sharp. So C would move up to C sharp. We're going to touch on this in your second lesson. We're going to more with this, but I wanted to just introduce this right now. So then you go from C sharp to D. You don't change that letter because it's already fixed. D to D sharp to E, like that. Now again, E to F is your half step, so you don't need to change it. You don't need an accidental or anything like that. Literally just those two notes. Then you move from F to F sharp to G to G sharp to A to A sharp, and A sharp to B, making your way all the way back around from B to C. So that's how the sharps work. As you go from low to high, you're going to use sharp pitches. Now, if you're going to go from high to low, you are going to use flat pitches. So if you start on B, if you start on the other end of the key, and you walk down a half step, that's going to take it from B to B flat. You don't call it A sharp because you're moving lower. So as you move lower, you want to flat those pitches so the motion makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys? You're going sharp, you're raising, so you want to make sure that you progressively get higher. As you're lowering, you're going flat. You want to progressively get lower. So B to B flat down to A down to A flat to G to G flat to F. And again, you've just got that half step right there, so you don't change it to an accidental. You don't say F flat because it's not, it's an E. Okay? Down to E to E flat down to D to D flat, and then D flat to C. And again, when you go back from C to B, it's not going to be a C flat or a B sharp or anything like that. They are just the two letter names because they do have that half step between. Now, I know that this last part went a little bit fast. That's all right. We are going to touch more on this in your next lesson. So go ahead and move on to the next part. We're going to do a bit of a self check on the main points of this lesson today, which was the sharp, natural, and flat. So if you look at the recap one more time, just remember what the sharp, natural, and flat are, what the whole step and half step are, and maybe what those symbols look like. Hopefully, look at that through. So remember, sharp goes up a half step, flat goes down a half step, natural cancels the sharp or flat, returns the pitch to its original tone. Sharp, flat. All right, let's move on to the next part and let's keep moving.